Hello and welcome to today's session of navigating the job search and hiring process while documented. My name is Caitlin Eisenhuth. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Assistant Director of International Programs at Pacific University, and I also provide hours at the PCC Clear Clinic. And that's actually where my interest in providing information around this really began. As an international student advisor, I primarily work with non-immigrant students. But over the pandemic, I began to think, how could I serve more students as well as broaden my knowledge base, hence my enter into the realm of documented folks, because a lot of the places and bureaucratic issues they face are actually fairly similar to the students I already help advocate and navigate those systems for. My co-presenter today is Helen Howell, who you can see on the screen, of course, and she's in the audience as well. And she is our new Director of Human Resources. And so we're breaking down this presentation today into two sections, really preparing for the job search, which is what I'm going to cover, as well as like some common challenges, advice from past dreamers in this arena. And then Helen's going to come up and talk about specifically engaging in the job search process as a documented individual. As there is nobody currently in this session physically, we're going to skip this slide. And again, that's just the session outline for those that are listening at home or on this recording. Part one's preparing for the job search, common challenges, advice from dreamers, resources, networking. And part two will actually be the job search, talking about finding your employer, application interview tips, and the I-9 process, along with what to do if HR maybe isn't prepared for what you're providing in terms of documentation. Some quick background numbers provided by Migration Policy. Oregon has about 10,000 active DACA recipients as of September 2020 from a number of countries. And there's actually about 15,000 possible more that are actually eligible for it that may or may not have applied yet. The reason I bring up these numbers is often, particularly California and Texas, as they have the most, oftentimes have more resources, but in reality, there is more people that are documented in our state than I think many people expect. In the workforce, they make about 0.25% as of 2020, which is about 382,000 workers, primarily in the fields of health and social services, professional services, education, hospitality, retail, trade, and construction. These are the primary areas where they are currently employed. I wanted to include something that MPI actually put on their website about DACA during the pandemic. And knowing that about like 200,000 were working alongside in essential roles, 27,000 are critical healthcare positions, 6,000 work in education. This is again to nail home that there are more folks around you that are documented than you may actually expect. And that's actually why we're doing this presentation, is to help make a number of our offices aware of the different needs or expectations of this group as they both enter the workforce or in the higher education sphere. I added this question because I thought maybe there'd be folks that would be asking like what concerns you the most, but we'll skip that and just go directly into my next phase, which is about common challenges. When you do a search of like what are the most common challenges for those that are documented, you get a number of resources, including just previous experiences from dreamers themselves. One that's most common is employers just not understanding what DACA is, and they believe they need to sponsor you in order for you to work. This is usually the first primary barrier to folks getting an interview, getting a job, because they think that DACA is the same as non-immigrant folks in F4J status, the realm that I spend the most time in. When in reality, when you have DACA, you also have what's called an EAD, an employment authorization document, which is your work card, which is really all you need to work. And that's usually the first barrier, is helping them to be able to navigate that with a recruiter or someone that's like, oh, you say that you're not a US citizen, well, I must need to sponsor you. Helping negotiate that conversation. Another common challenge that has been reported is deciding whether they disclose status or how to do so. You do not have to disclose status. For some dreamers, it's very important that that's a part of their identity. They want to share that. Others do not talk about it at all. But helping students as they enter into the realm of job searching to decide when or how, if they wish to disclose, is another aspect of the job search that's an important step, just preparing them for that. Another step that is often forgotten about is licensure requirements. There are fields that still do not provide the opportunity to get licensure for documented folks. These are specifically like resident RNs, nurses, registered nurses in some states, including Wisconsin. That was a big one. That was a real problem. So as students enter into advising, picking their major, knowing what areas of study they really can go all the way to the job is important. Legal and financial barriers that may prevent traveling, securing housing, and financing unpaid internships. This is another piece that's really important. If you are a documented individual, if you have an advanced parole, that means you are approved for travel, but that's not always guaranteed. As that is a reality, jobs that have international travel requirements are oftentimes not possible for a lot of folks without additional legal advising. And it's really important, along helping them navigate these conversations, to also help them build a network. So many dreamers reported that one of the challenges they face is they didn't have the mentor person helping them navigate, like, how do I connect with these people? How do I get these experiences? Who should I talk to? And so these are the most common challenges when you look at what dreamers say about navigating the job search after they graduate. Some just general advice that you have is, like, if you can, talk to other dreamers who've gone through the process. Again, goes back to having that mentor and knowing how to network. Do a fellowship or an internship. I found my job search process much easier if I had experience to draw upon. So we'll talk about that in resources in a minute of what a fellowship is. Conduct your own research in search of DACA-friendly employers. Some companies actively seek to hire them and have spoken out and advocating for those experiences. I really like this one. Rejection is not a statement about you as a person. You'll be rejected, but also provided opportunities. Practice interviewing. You need an elevator speech, a way to describe your strengths. Keep it to 3 to 4 and have 3 good questions to ask in the end. Make sure your resume and cover letter always matches what the company needs and the information is easily found. Those are, we're talking to advising and career folks right now. That's pretty standard practice. Subscribe to websites that post jobs as well as companies you're interested in. Network. A lot of things are similar to what we notice for students just in general that have no experience in the job search process. It just so happens that this population has a couple extra pieces that are just important for helping them navigate. As you saw both in the advice from dreamers and the common challenges, one of the things that really stands out is just getting work experience, something to talk about. Depending on if they are documented or undocumented can actually be a step to possibly stopping them from getting that work experience. If they're documented, everything is open. They're able to work. But if they're undocumented or just eligible and they've not gotten their EAD card yet, they really have to be looking for what are called fellowships. And what a fellowship is essentially like receiving a stipend, almost like it's like a scholarship. Oftentimes fellowships are done out of financial aid office or out of the college itself for folks that are undocumented. And what a fellowship does is it's basically a project and you receive a stipend like you would for a scholarship. This allows for an opportunity to get work experience while not actually working necessarily, working as a legal sense by the Department of Labor. I've listed a number of the most common locations that are provided by most websites that cater to specifically documented and undocumented individuals for work experience. And you can go through any of these here. And as this is being recorded, you can easily also find these websites at the Eastern Washington University site. This is their specific list. When I said earlier, networking is a challenge, there's luckily a lot of online platforms as much as there are local. And so I listed specifically some alliances, associations. As we work with a lot of healthcare professionals, I definitely included the pre-health dreamers in there. That's a very large network with a lot of opportunities. They frequently post not only just essays about their experiences, but things that they're finding out as they try things on the ground. There's also DACA, undergrads, undocumented professions. These are locations where if you do not have DACA, where there are opportunities put online for you. And the Dream Bar Association. As I was saying earlier about licensure, that's often a challenge for those that are documented of getting licensure in certain fields. The legal field is still one that can be both a challenge and a possibility depending upon the state you live in. So the Dream Bar Association is specifically for those that are documented or undocumented pursuing a legal career. And I also provide just a few more resources because again, that's part of this is just making sure you have a place to really look for opportunities. One of my favorite, I definitely have to say, is the Life After College, a guide for undocumented students. It's a huge project done by UCLA. that's like 76 pages long. Everything from what should you know about entering grad school as an undocumented person, to how do you open up your own business and get an ITIN for the first time. The Dreamer Jobs group is also a good one, and Immigrants Rising Resources as well. That's what I would say is probably the ones you see the most resources on. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Helen to do the specific job search information, really, resources information on that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Helen Howell, the HR director here at Pacific. And so I'm going to talk about the job search. I'll talk about some just best practices for anyone, and then I'll talk about some specific parts for documented folks who are in this job search area. So when you are looking for a company to work for, you're out there, you're Googling, you're trying to find what you want, look for companies that mention DACA. There are companies out there, as Caitlin said, that are actively recruiting for documented employees. And so if you can find someone, a lot of times they'll have a lot of resources and assistance during your application process. Also look for companies that have clear diversity statements. You can also go in and you can see who's on their diversity committee. What are those people doing in the community? There might be avenues for networking with those folks through those other external opportunities, or you can see here on the bottom, the company might host networking events, but there might be other networking events that you could connect to that employer and get your face known and get your name known. If you find a company that you really like, sign up for job alerts so that you get that immediate alert. You can be front of the line and you can apply right away, and check back frequently for updated jobs. So make sure that you're in the know and that you're applying as soon as possible. Here's a wide spread of companies that have made documented announcements on their website, so you can come back and you can check them out and see if any of them connect with jobs that you're interested in. When you have found that company and you have found that position, you want to make sure that you get your application together. So don't be shy about applying for stretch positions. It is absolutely okay to put your application in for positions where you don't meet 100% of the job requirements. We can all learn on the job. And one way to show your ability to expand into the position is with your cover letter. Those are really key areas in your application process to show an employer how you are a stakeholder in the company's mission, how you want to make an impact, and how you can do it in the position itself. So look for things about the company specifically, see what kind of challenges they're up to, mention how you can help, make sure you show your interest and understanding of the position. I've actually seen cover letters where people go in and they see those must-haves and they cut and paste those in, and then they say what experience they have that would meet those requirements. Sometimes those are transferable skills. So maybe you don't have one of the exact requirements, but you've done something similar and you can see how that would be beneficial. And then show how the position supports your career and your goals. They want to know that you're passionate about the position that you're applying for. You can also make your resume match the job. We all have the resume that's like the standard resume, but if they are looking for, right now our team is hiring for a benefits person. If someone's applying to that position and in their resume, they advance any kind of benefit experience they have to the top, our team of people who are in the recruiting committee are going to see that right away. So great way to get your resume at the top of the pile. Important to know that when you are looking through applications, employers cannot ask whether an employee is legally allowed to work. They can ask if you are able to work in the United States, but they can't ask anything about your process. So similar to what Caitlin was saying, they can say, can you show documentation that you can work in the United States? They cannot ask if anything about your legal status during the application process. So if you see that, it would be a red flag that maybe this company is not going to be as friendly through the application process. And employers can also not ask about your immigration status, including whether or not you have DACA. So you've got your application in, the interview is coming, you're wondering how you're going to navigate this. It's okay to be nervous. People show up nervous to interviews all the time, and everybody expects that. It's a really unanticipated event that you're joining, and so show up as you are and be okay with that. You can ask for the questions in advance. So some people who maybe English isn't a first language might prefer to see them so that they can understand them. Some people who are neurodivergent might like to have the questions in advance so they can process that information and show up. Not a bad thing to ask about seeing the questions in advance. One thing to remember is that you are interviewing the company as much as the company is interviewing you. So always be prepared to assess whether this is going to be a great fit for you in your job search. Here are some questions that are great ideas for anyone to ask during that interview process. What do you like best about working here? What would you change about the customer experiences? Major challenges coming up? How can I help? And I love this last question. What lingering concerns do you have about my ability to excel in the position that I can address right now? And when a candidate asks me that, you are prepared to tell them if there's something maybe in their experience that you want to know more about. And if somebody says, no, I don't have any more questions, then you kind of get a good pulse while you're in the interview of where you are in that process. It's always nice to send thank you notes. It's always appreciated to follow up afterwards, especially if you can connect that thank you note to something you talked about in the application and interviewing process. Additional questions. So it's up to you whether you want to talk about DACA status during your interview process or during your entire application process. If it's something that you are not comfortable with, then you don't have to reveal anything at all. And like Caitlin was saying, you might feel like this is a big part of your identity and you want to have that as part of your application process. That is also absolutely fine. Here are some ways that you could ask questions to see how DACA friendly these companies are. A great question to ask is, what their professional development process is to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can ask this question without revealing anything about yourself or anything about maybe your process, but still get a pulse on how they might approach some of these processes. And then we have 3 questions that really go to more DACA and undocumented folks that are going to be coming to their workforce and how they support or address those processes. And if you are comfortable with asking those in an interview, it is a great time to do that. So recommended depending on your comfort level. Maybe good just to have them in your back pocket when you go to the interview and see how the interview unfolds and see if it's something that feels familiar. Another thing that you can always do, sometimes after an interview, you think, oh no, I should have said this other wonderful thing about myself, or I felt too shy about asking this question in front of a panel. You can follow up in a thank you and just say, I really appreciated meeting all of you. I had this one other question that was left unanswered. So you don't have to do it right in the interview process. You can do it anytime that feels right for you. When you're hired, so you've got the offer letter, you've negotiated with your offer letter, please always know that negotiations are part of the application process. And even if they're in a situation where the compensation is locked down, ask about other things, ask about vacation time, ask about other types of resources that might be available. If you're new to the workforce, ask about professional development funds that could be built into your position so that you have that to grow your career. Think about what might be a great way for you to be more supported in your position, and please ask those questions before signing your offer letter. But once you've signed the offer letter, you're showing up for your first day and you're ready to complete paperwork. And perhaps this is a point at which you haven't yet discussed your DACA status and you're feeling a little bit nervous about what might happen. So what will happen on the very first day is that your employer will ask for documentation to verify your employment eligibility. The I-9 form has to be completed within 3 days of employment. And if not, then you're up for I-9 violation, and that is a big concern for all employers. So be prepared in the first day or second day to bring in your information and fill out the paperwork. Sometimes it's done in paper form, so I have a paper form I can show you. Sometimes it's done in an online system as well. no matter which way you go, there's an employee part that you fill out and there's an employer part that you fill out. And usually the employer part is either filled out by a manager or a person in HR. Sometimes those people filling out the second section are not going to be prepared for alternative types of documentation. So it's great for you to come in with the information you need to reassure them that you have the documentation, you are authorized to work, this is what it looks like, and be able to answer any questions that they have. The documentation that you'll have is an employment authorization document. The EAD kind of looks like a driver's license. It has all of the information you need. In the I-9 process, you either show something from list A that is only one item of documentation you need to show, or you show two things, one from B and one from C. The EAD is from list A. So that is the only form of documentation you need to show to complete the I-9 form. And if you show your current EAD that's not expired, they cannot ask you to show a different documentation. So they have to receive that documentation and you should be prepared to push back if they ask for something else. I'm going to show this form right now so that you have an idea about what to expect. And you can go to the website and you can print one and you can bring it with you so that you're prepared to talk about it. You can even fill out your I-9 in advance and bring it in so that you don't have to do it kind of under duress. And you could always, if you have someone who's a mentor or someone that you could go and talk to, you could have someone double check, am I ready? Am I good? Is this appropriate? So the I-9 form has section 1 that the employee fills out. Important to note that on this form, it has, just information about yourself, but for someone who's a DACA, you want to click for an alien authorized to work. You enter the EAD expiration number here, and then you have the number on your card that you enter right here. And you fill this out and you sign here. That is all that you have to fill out on the I-9 form. The person who's filling out your form at the office will fill out all of this information and fill out the details here in list A with the EAD. They will make a note in additional information that it's that there's a DACA with a date of expiration so that they can track that and make sure that you show new information when you revise your EAD, and then they sign the form right here. That's all that needs to happen with the I-9 form. It's not a complicated form, but on the third page of all printed I-9s is the list of acceptable documentation. So if you bring in a paper form, or even if you're walking in to do your I-9, this is a great document to bring with you because it states clearly right here that the employment authorization document is eligible under list A. So if you got any pushback, you can say, this is the I-9 form, here is the documentation I'm showing, and that should end that conversation right there. That will be perhaps the most confusing paperwork that you have to fill out because there's so many different options and you're kind of wondering where you fit in. But there's other things as well in terms of benefit enrollment, in terms of your tax forms, all of those types of things. Those are all very common questions that your HR department should be able to either answer for you or give you some advice on how to fill those out, or resources where you can learn about that on your own. And then after your first day, it's up to you. You're in the job, you've got your foot in the door. And so, yeah, show up with a great attitude and do your best every day and enjoy your employment. If there are any questions now or ever, please don't hesitate to reach out. Would love to answer anything that comes up for anyone. Thanks.